Sarah Johnson stood by the kitchen window, gazing at the small garden behind her suburban New York home. Autumn had arrived early this year, with golden leaves falling gently in the crisp breeze, carrying a chill that seeped into her skin. She clutched the envelope from Princeton University, her fingers trembling as they traced the embossed logo. She had awaited this moment for 19 years, 19 years of silent sacrifices, sleepless nights, and double shifts to raise her daughter Emily. Sarah smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It's finally here," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Sarah's life had never been easy. 20 years ago, her husband Michael was taken from her in a horrific car accident on the highway. She was only 39, then a few months pregnant with Emily. The doctors called it a miracle that the baby survived, but Sarah knew it was a burden she would carry alone. With no husband and no family to lean on, she struggled through life single-handedly. By day, she worked as an office clerk at a small Manhattan firm. By night, she waited tables at a local cafe. Her meager wages were enough to send Emily to Lakeside Prep, the prestigious private school where her daughter could dream of a bright future. Sarah vividly remembered the long nights when Emily was young, sitting by her bedside telling stories about Michael. "Your father was the most wonderful man, always dreaming of a happy family. He'd be so proud of you, Emily." Back then, Emily, with her wide, curious eyes, listened intently. But as time passed, her daughter changed. The once obedient girl grew demanding, comparing herself to her wealthy friends. Sarah told herself it was just teenage rebellion, that Emily needed time. She sacrificed everything: no new clothes for herself, no vacations, not even a single date. Everything was for Emily, for her future. Now the envelope in her hands was proof of all those efforts. Sarah took a deep breath and called out, "Emily." "There's a letter from Princeton." Rapid footsteps thundered down the stairs. Emily burst into the kitchen, her golden hair flowing, her blue eyes sparkling. No, the girl, the 19-year-old woman, snatched the envelope and tore it open without a word of thanks. "I got in Princeton, Mom, I got in," Emily shrieked, jumping around the kitchen. Sarah hugged her tightly, tears mingling with joy. "Sweetheart, I'm so proud of you. Your father, he'd be thrilled." But the joy was short-lived, eclipsed by Emily's calculating expression. She plopped down at the table, scrolling through her phone. "I have to tell everyone. Oh, Chloe and Anna Henderson got into Yale. Their parents rented out Bellini's for a party. Mom, we have to do that too." Sarah froze. Bellini's was the most upscale restaurant in the area, and renting it could cost a month's salary. "Honey, we can't afford that. We could have a party at home. I'll bake and decorate." Emily frowned, her voice sharp. "It's Princeton, Mom. I don't want to look pathetic in front of my friends. It's bad enough I have to say I'm adopted, and now I have to admit my mom's practically a grandma." The words cut like a knife. Sarah's heart clenched. At 58, her hair was streaked with gray, her face etched with wrinkles from years of toil. But practically a grandma, Emily knew full well that Sarah had adopted her from an orphanage at age 3 after countless failed attempts to have a biological child. Sarah pushed the pain aside, as she always did. "All right, honey, I'll figure it out. We'll have a fantastic party." Emily smiled satisfied and returned to her phone. Sarah silently calculated, dipping into the emergency fund, cutting next month's expenses. She told herself it was worth it as long as Emily was happy. Sarah's modest home transformed into a lavish party venue 3 weeks later. She hired caterers decorated with balloons and fresh flowers, and even paid for student bartenders. The cost drained her savings, but Sarah didn't regret it. She stood in the kitchen arranging trays of shrimp hors d'oeuvres when Emily stormed in with 3 friends from Lakeside Prep. Chloe, Anna, and Emma, the only one who smiled warmly. "Mom, where's the shrimp?" Emily demanded, barely glancing at her. Sarah smiled. "Coming right up, honey." "Congratulations to all of you for your acceptance," Emma replied. "Your house is lovely, Mrs. Johnson." But Emily rolled her eyes. "God, Mom, don't start with the small talk. Just bring the food out." Sarah swallowed hard, turning away to hide her hurt. It was Emily's night. She didn't want to ruin it. The party came alive, music, echoing, laughter filling the air. From the kitchen, Sarah watched Emily shine among her friends, talking about Princeton and her bright future, not once mentioning her mother. Sarah reassured herself, "She's young. She'll understand later." Heading upstairs for more napkins, she passed the living room and heard giggles. Emily's voice. "Can you imagine introducing her to my college friends? At least my real mom was probably young and cool." Chloe laughed. Was she a teen mom or something? Emily replied casually. I tell everyone my parents were brilliant grad students who died in an accident. It's less embarrassing than admitting I was adopted by a desperate older woman who couldn't have kids. Sarah froze, her blood turning to ice. She listened as another voice asked, "But she's paying for Princeton, right?" Emily snorted. "She's mortgaging the house. Like I'd let her off the hook after all the times she embarrassed me." Remember parent-teacher night? She asked what existentialism meant in front of everyone. Laughter erupted. "She's like a maid who thinks she's your mom," Emily continued, her voice dripping with contempt. "Always hovering, asking about my day like she could understand my life." Sarah trembled, gripping the door. She wanted to burst into scream, but her feet felt rooted to the spot. "You'll still visit her, right?" Emma asked softly. Emily laughed. "Only until I get my inheritance. The old lady won't live forever. Then I'll be free." Sarah backed away, retreating to her bedroom. She caught her reflection in the mirror, gray hair wrinkles, the dress she'd splurged on for tonight. She saw herself through Emily's eyes for the first time, old, out of place, embarrassing. The sounds of the party echoed below, but inside Sarah everything had shattered. The foundation of her life, the mother-daughter bond, the sacrifices felt like an illusion. The next morning, Sarah cleaned up the party's aftermath while Emily slept. Each broken wine glass, each crumpled napkin felt like evidence of her naivety. Emily shuffled into the kitchen, around noon, hair tangled. "Any coffee, Mom?" Sarah poured a cup without speaking. "Great party, right?" Emily said, scrolling through her phone. "Chloe asked where we catered from. I told some fancy place downtown, not that cheap deli you used." The casual lie stung differently now. Sarah whispered, "Emily, we need to talk." Emily frowned. "I'm meeting Emma soon. What's wrong with you?" "You look weird." Sarah took a deep breath. "I overheard your conversation with your friends last night." Emily's demeanor shifted instantly from annoyance to calculation. "What conversation? The one where you called me old and stupid like a maid. You talked about waiting for me to die to get the house." Emily forced a laugh. "Just kidding, Mom. Girls say crazy stuff to sound cool." But Sarah pressed, "Do you tell people your birth parents were brilliant grad students who died?" Emily's smile faltered, then she snapped, "You eavesdropped on my party, why do you care?" "It's easier than explaining to you." Sarah's heart ached. "We need to talk about Princeton." Emily's voice turned sharp. "What's to talk about? I'm going. No, you decided, and I agreed to mortgage the house." "But now," Emily cut her off, "now what you're threatening not to pay because you're hurt. Grow up, Mom." The contempt in her voice made Sarah flinch. She whispered, "This isn't about hurt feelings, it's about—" Sarah stood frozen in the kitchen, her hands gripping the counter to avoid collapsing. Emily's words echoed in her mind. "Grow up, Mom." The contempt in her daughter's voice cut deep, as if Sarah were a burden rather than the one who had sacrificed everything. She tried to keep her voice steady, but her heart pounded like a war drum. "This isn't just about hurt feelings, Emily. It's about realizing you're not the person I thought you were." Emily crossed her arms, her eyes flashing with defiance. "So who do you think I am? The perfect daughter, always grateful. Life's not a Hollywood movie, Mom. I was just being honest with my friends." Sarah's throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to recount the years of working herself to exhaustion, skipping meals to save for Emily's ballet lessons, staying up nights worrying when she was sick. But the words wouldn't come. Emily turned away, grabbing her purse. "I'm meeting Emma. Think about it all you want, but don't ruin my Princeton plans." The door slammed, leaving Sarah alone in the cold kitchen. She sank into a chair, hands covering her face. Tears fell not from anger, but from the pain of betrayal by the child she'd raised, blood or not. All afternoon, Sarah wandered the house like a ghost. She picked up the party's remnants, broken glass shards, napkins reeking of wine. Each item was recalled from last night when Emily shone among her friends while Sarah lingered in the background. She remembered the overheard words, sharp as knives, "She's like a maid who thinks she's my mom." How could her daughter feel that Sarah wondered if she'd been blind to Emily's changes? When had her sweet girl become so cold, so calculating? She decided to call Lisa, her closest friend from college. A retired teacher, Lisa had been by Sarah's side through the hard years after Michael's death. "Lisa, it's Sarah. I need to talk about Emily." Lisa's voice hesitated. "Sarah, I've been waiting for this call for years." Sarah was stunned. "What do you mean?" Lisa sighed. "Remember when Emily was 16 and said I was sick so I didn't come to your birthday, I wasn't ill? She called me that morning saying you wanted a family-only party because you were sensitive about turning 55. Sarah gripped the phone, her stomach twisting. But I asked her to invite you. Lisa continued, her voice heavy with regret. And my sister's funeral when you couldn't come because Emily had a panic attack before her play. I saw her backstage 15 minutes after you canceled, laughing with her castmates like nothing happened. She wasn't hyperventilating. The world seemed to tilt. Sarah remembered that day vividly. Emily was on the floor, gasping and tears streaming. Sarah had left Lisa alone in her grief to comfort her daughter. That's impossible. Lisa continued. Emily sabotaged her friendship with Anne from the book club with rumors told Sarah's date, Richard, she'd called him financially unstable, and lost birthday gifts only to sell them online. Sarah's voice trembled. Why didn't you tell me? Lisa sighed. I tried subtly, but you always had an excuse. Emily's just a teenager. She's stressed from school. After a while, I let you believe what you needed to. The call ended, and Sarah sat motionless at the kitchen table. She felt doubly betrayed by her daughter and by her own blindness. The pieces fell into place. Emily wasn't a victim of teenage rebellion, but a skilled manipulator. Sarah had given everything, but what had she received? A hollow relationship where she was a tool for Emily's ambitions. With sudden resolve, Sarah climbed the stairs to Emily's room. She'd never violated her daughter's privacy, but now it was different. She opened drawers, checked under the mattress, rifled through the desk. Behind a pile of shoes, she found a box of jewelry in the closet. Her mother's pearl earrings, the bracelet Michael gave her for their 5th anniversary, and the sapphire pendant stolen in last year's break-in. Sarah trembled, tears falling. This wasn't an accident, but deliberate deceit. Under the bed was a locked leather journal. The key was on Emily's keychain left behind in her rush. Sarah's hands shook as she opened it, knowing she was crossing a line. The first entry dated 3 years ago. Another day playing the perfect daughter. Sometimes I think I deserve an Oscar for this act. Sarah's heart clenched as she read on. Mom bought that stupid laptop for my A's, like I'd settle for anything less than top of the line. Said it'd help with college apps, and watched her drain her savings. So predictable. Another page, Mom thinks I'm at SAT prep on Thursdays. Actually, at Tyler's, his parents are never home, and he's got good booze. If she knew I was drinking, she'd cry for days. Pathetic. The latest entry chilled her. Met Dr. Hansen about Mom's cognitive decline. He wouldn't commit without seeing her, but he gave me information on the power of attorney. At 21, if I document enough odd behaviors, I could control her finances. 2 more years playing the dutiful daughter, and the house is mine. She'll never see it coming. Sarah closed the journal, feeling sick. This wasn't rebellion, it was a calculated long-term scheme. Her phone pinged with a bank alert, a $500 charge at Nordstrom. Sarah checked her wallet. Her credit card was there, but Emily had borrowed it last week for textbooks. Logging into her account, Sarah saw months of unauthorized charges, upscale restaurants, clothing stores, Ubers, to unfamiliar addresses. She opened Emily's laptop, guessing the password, Princeton 2025. Emails confirmed everything, an application to an exclusive Oxford summer program. Emily never mentioned messages mocking Sarah's career and appearance, and a draft letter to her school counselor rejecting a full scholarship to State University for Princeton. Sarah was stunned. Emily deliberately chose the costliest path, forcing her to take on debt. The front door's sound snapped her back to reality. She quickly put everything back and went downstairs, a strange calm settling over her. Emily walked in, still on her phone. Emma says hi. Sarah asked, have fun. It was fine, Sarah cut in. About this morning I've been thinking. You're right, I overreacted. Emily looked suspicious, then smug. Good. I knew you'd see reason. Let's plan for Princeton. Emily chattered about dorms, but Sarah smiled silently, vowing that this was the last time she would manipulate her. The game was about to change. She felt a new strength, not anger, but a resolve to reclaim her life. That night, Sarah lay awake thinking of Michael. What did I do wrong? But deep down, she knew sacrifice didn't always earn loyalty, and it was time to take back her life. Sarah met with David Thompson, Michael's friend, and their family lawyer the next morning. She laid out everything: the overheard conversation, the stolen jewelry, the journal, the emails. David nodded. You're not obligated to pay for college. Emily's 18. And Michael's investment. Sarah interrupted. It paid off $560,000. I'll use it to change everything. They planned to transfer the money to a private account, cancel Emily's credit cards, and set up a trust with conditions. David handed her a community college brochure. It's time you chased your dreams, Sarah. Literature, those notebooks you wrote. Sarah took it, her heart stirring. She'd set aside her passion for writing when Michael died. Back home, Emily waited with Princeton forms. Where were you? I needed these signed hours ago, Sarah replied. I met with the lawyer. Your father's investment paid off. Emily's eyes lit up with greed. How much enough to change our lives? But not how you think. Emily froze. What's that mean? Sarah said calmly. I've realized our relationship was built on my blindness and your manipulation. Emily scoffed. Back to the eavesdropping. It was a joke, but Sarah listed the evidence, the rejected scholarship, the hidden Oxford program, the stolen jewelry, the journal. Emily paled. You went through my stuff. You had no right. Sarah stood firm. I'll give you what you need, not what you want. A lesson in consequences. Emily bewildered. What's that mean? You'll see tomorrow? Sarah went upstairs feeling like she'd awakened from a long sleep. She was no longer a victim. Sarah woke at dawn, the first rays of sunlight filtering through the curtains, illuminating a face no longer weary with worry. Last night, after Emily left the room in confusion, Sarah had lain awake for hours, not in pain, but in planning for herself for the first time in years. She brewed coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and gazed at the garden where Michael once planted roses. You'd approve, she whispered, as if he were still there. The money from Michael's investment wasn't just a financial lifeline, but the key to her freedom. Emily came downstairs later, eyes, shadowed hair, disheveled, a sign of a sleepless night. She sat across from Sarah, silent, scrolling her phone. Sarah took a deep breath and slid a coffee mug toward her. We need to talk clearly today. Emily looked up defensive. About what you already said, everything. You went through my stuff, you know my secrets. Now what? Kicking me out? Sarah shook her head, her voice calm but resolute. Not kicking you out. I'm not paying for Princeton anymore. Emily froze, then stood. Are you crazy? I've already accepted. Everyone knows you want to humiliate me. The kitchen air grew tense like a taut string about to snap. Sarah's heart pounded, but it wasn't fear. It was the strength of truth. She pulled her chair closer. You had a full scholarship to State University. You rejected it without telling me. That was your choice, and now the consequence is that you attend there. Emily laughed bitterly, eyes glistening. State. That's like prison. Princeton opens doors. State is pathetic. Sarah met her gaze. What's sad? Emily, living authentically or forcing me to mortgage the house to maintain your image with friends? Emily paced the kitchen, hands clenched. You're punishing me for one stupid conversation. You eavesdropped, you snooped. You're the one in the wrong. Sarah didn't waver. This isn't punishment, it's teaching you. I indulged you too long, letting you think love is a tool. That stops now. She handed Emily a folder. I contacted State University. They'll reconsider your scholarship if you apply by the end of the week. Emily glared at the folder like it was an enemy. Why would you do this if you're so mad at me? Sarah softened. Because I'm still your mom. I want you to succeed, but real success is not built on lies. Emily opened the folder, scanned it, then tossed it down. And the trust fund. What are the conditions? Sarah explained. You get a monthly stipend for school expenses. The rest comes after you graduate and work full-time for 2 years. Emily shouted. 2 years? That's like jail. I refuse. Sarah smiled sadly. You can choose. Stay here, contribute to household expenses, and attend community college with me. Emily stopped, eyes calculating. You've thought of everything, haven't you? Sarah nodded. 19 years of excusing your behavior gave me plenty of time to reflect. Emily stormed upstairs, slamming her door. Sarah heard muffled sobs, her heart aching. She wanted to rush up and comfort her as she always had, but held back. This was a necessary lesson. She picked up the community college brochure and enrolled online in an American literature class. It's time, she told herself. That afternoon, Sarah walked the neighborhood unhurried by Emily's demands for once. She ran into James Carter, a neighbor 3 houses down, watering his plants. A community college literature professor, divorced and childless. James smiled. Sarah, you look different. Surprised, she asked. How so? More present? You're usually somewhere else. His observation hit home. Sarah had lived for Emily for years, her mind consumed by her daughter's needs. She smiled. I'm changing. I signed up for your class. James lit up. Great. It's a mix of young and older students. You'll love it. They talked about books, and for the first time Sarah felt at ease, not calculating her words to avoid upsetting Emily. Back home, Emily waited, her face feigning remorse. Mom, I'm sorry. I was stressed. Sarah shook her head. No, empty apologies. I canceled your credit cards and transferred the car insurance to your name. The bills are in the folder. Emily was stunned. You're serious? How do I live? Sarah replied. Like countless students get a part-time job. Emily cried, not acting this time. You hate me. Sarah hugged her but didn't yield. I love you, which is why I'm doing this. To help you grow. That night, Sarah called Lisa. You were right. I'm teaching her now. Lisa encouraged her. You're being a real mom. Sarah felt lighter but still feared Emily's resentment. The next morning, she went to the community college, her heart racing like a new student's. James's class was captivating. She dove into discussions about Fitzgerald. Her first A thrilled her. I did it, Emily slowly adjusted reluctantly. She applied to State University, accepted the stipend, and got a cafe job. At first, she was angry, calling Sarah controlling, but Sarah stayed patient. She started writing again, turning journal entries into short stories. James invited her for coffee. You have literary talent. Sarah blushed. It's been years. They talked for hours, and she realized she'd forgotten what it felt like to be heard. Emily noticed. You're dating my professor. That's weird, Sarah laughed. I'm 58, not 18. I have a right to live. Their mother-daughter relationship remained tense, but Sarah sensed change. She joined Lisa's book club, bought new clothes, and stood taller in the mirror. Through arguments, Emily admitted, I hate state, but maybe I need it. Sarah nodded. Exactly, to find yourself. She began writing second chapters about rediscovering herself after betrayal. James praised it. This is your story. Sarah smiled, and others too. 3 months passed, and Sarah blossomed. She dated James regularly, feeling a new kind of love. Emily moved to the State's dorms, living with Tyler, a cheerful roommate. She grew to love literature, though she denied it at first. Sarah was invited to lecture on Gothic literature, why not life's long? Emily called You're Different, less available. Sarah replied, I have my own life. For the first time, Emily fell silent, thoughtful. Sarah knew the uncovered secrets hadn't just destroyed, they'd rebuilt a truer family. She looked at the garden, Michael's roses blooming, a reminder. Sacrifice has limits, and self-love is the key. Sarah stood before her bedroom mirror, the soft morning light highlighting the silver strands in her hair. She adjusted her new blouse, the first in years, not from a clearance rack. Last night's sleep was restless, not from worrying about Emily as before, but from the monumental decision forming within her. Today she would face her daughter again, not with tears or concessions, but with truth and clear boundaries. Sarah took a deep breath, whispering, I can do this. She walked downstairs to the kitchen where Emily sat scrolling through her phone with a sullen expression. You're up early, Sarah said, her voice gentle but not weak. Emily looked up, her blue eyes flashing with defensiveness. What, I'm supposed to sleep all day to make you happy? Sarah ignored the jab, pouring coffee for both. She sat across from Emily, placing a folder of documents on the table, evidence prepared with lawyer David Thompson. We need to continue yesterday's talk, Sarah began, her voice steady but firm. Emily rolled her eyes, back to the eavesdropping. Why do you keep digging? I told you it was a joke. Sarah shook her head, her gaze unwavering. It wasn't eavesdropping, Emily. I saw everything, the jewelry I thought was lost, your journal, the email rejecting the state scholarship, and your plan to declare me cognitively impaired to take my assets. The kitchen air grew still. Emily paled, her hand tightening on the coffee mug, but she quickly regained a facade of confidence. You went through my stuff and made up stories to punish me. That's low. Sarah didn't flinch. She opened the folder, pulling out printed emails and photos of the jewelry. This isn't made up. You rejected a scholarship to force me to mortgage the house. You called me a maid, said I was stupid. You planned to wait for my death to take the house. This isn't a joke, Emily. Emily stood the chair, scraping the floor. You had no right to go through my things, that's private. Her voice trembled, not entirely from anger, but from being exposed. Sarah stayed calm, though her heart raced. I respected you for 19 years, but you didn't respect me. You used my love, and I let it go on too long. Emily laughed bitterly, eyes glistening. So what now? Cancel Princeton to get revenge. You know how much I need it. Sarah shook her head. Not revenge. I'm allowing you to attend the state with the scholarship you rejected. It's the consequence of your choices, not punishment. Emily paced the kitchen, her blonde hair swaying, her voice rising. State, You want me to be a laughingstock? Chloe and Anna are bragging about Yale, and I'm stuck at that mediocre school. Sarah's voice was low but sharp. Chloe and Anna aren't paying for your future. I did, and you repaid me with lies. Now you face the consequences. Emily stopped, eyes red. You don't understand. Princeton is my dream. You're destroying it over one stupid conversation. Sarah slid the folder toward her. Not one conversation. A pattern of deceit, stealing, lying, manipulating. I won't let it continue. Emily opened the folder, her hands shaking as she skimmed the documents. She saw the state university confirmation, the trust fund conditions, and the credit card bills. You canceled my cards, she whispered, her voice full of panic. Sarah nodded and transferred the car insurance to your name. You're 19, old enough to manage. Emily sank into the chair, tears streaming. You hate me. You want me to suffer? Sarah stepped closer, placing a hand on her shoulder, but Emily shrugged it off. I love you, Sarah said, her voice breaking. But love doesn't mean letting you manipulate. You need to learn that actions have consequences. Silence fell, broken only by the ticking wall clock. Emily wiped her tears, her voice small. I don't want to go to state. I don't like this life. Sarah replied. You have choices. Stay here, contribute to expenses, and attend community college with me, or find another way. But I won't mortgage the house or pay to maintain your image. Emily looked at her, and there was no calculation in her eyes for once. You're really serious, she whispered. Sarah nodded, completely. Sarah went to the garden that afternoon where Michael's roses bloomed. She sat on the old wooden bench holding her notebook where she once wrote short stories before motherhood consumed her time. She began writing again for the first time in 2 decades. The words flowed, telling of a woman rediscovering herself after pain. She realized writing wasn't just a passion, but a way to heal. Her phone rang. Lisa. How'd it go? Lisa asked, concerned. Sarah sighed. Tough but necessary. Emily cried and got angry, but for the first time she didn't control me. Lisa laughed. You're stronger than you know. That evening, Sarah attended James Carter's literature class. He greeted her warmly. Right on time, new student. Sarah sat among younger students feeling out of place, yet excited. The lecture on The Great Gatsby engrossed her, easing the family drama. When James praised her insight on the green light, Sarah blushed, rediscovering a forgotten part of herself. After class, James invited her for coffee. Ever thought about publishing? Sarah smiled. Long ago, maybe. Not sure now, James nodded. It's never too late, Sarah. Back home, Sarah found Emily in the living room, eyes swollen. She said, I reapplied to the state, and her voice was no longer aggressive. Sarah was surprised. Good. That's a start. Emily looked at her. I'm still mad at you, but I'll try. Sarah nodded, a weightlifter. She knew the road ahead was long. Emily might hate her, but Sarah wasn't afraid anymore. She was rebuilding herself step by step. That night she wrote another page in her notebook. Love isn't blind sacrifice. Sometimes it's setting boundaries to set both free. She looked out at the moonlit roses. Sarah felt hope for the first time for Emily and herself. Emily appeared at the door. Mom, can I stay here tonight? Sarah nodded, asking no questions. Emily sat on the couch, hugging a pillow, silent. Sarah didn't press, quietly making tea. In that moment, their silence was new, not tense, not manipulative, but the start of a more genuine bond. Sarah knew they were far from healed, but for the first time she believed it was possible. Early winter sunlight streamed through the living room window, illuminating the worn wooden floor of the suburban New York home. Sarah sat in an armchair holding a steaming tea mug, her eyes fixed on the garden where Michael's rose bushes were fading. Her mind was no longer chaotic as it had been days before, but the pain lingered, not from Emily's harsh words, but from the truth she was about to confront. Yesterday, after their tense confrontation, Emily had agreed to reapply to State University, but Sarah knew it was only the beginning. For real change, they needed to face the secrets hidden too long. Sarah set her tea down and retrieved a folder from the desk drawer. Inside were the proofs she'd gathered, photos of hidden jewelry, printed emails rejecting the scholarship, and copies of Emily's journal pages, cold words about manipulating assets. She didn't want to use them to condemn her daughter, but Emily needed to see that the truth couldn't be denied forever. Soft footsteps on the stairs broke her thoughts. Emily appeared in a loose sweater, her hair tied back and her eyes still red from last night. You're up early, she said, trying to sound casual but betraying tension. Sarah nodded, gesturing to the chair across. Sit, honey. I want us to talk more clearly. Emily hesitated, then sat, hands clasped tightly. More about yesterday. I already applied to the state. What else do you want? Sarah opened the folder and placed items on the table, photos of her grandmother's pearl earrings, Michael's anniversary bracelet, the state email, and the journal page. Please look at these and be honest, Sarah said, her voice calm but sharp. This isn't a joke or a misunderstanding. This is what you did. Emily stared at the items, her face shifting from defensiveness to panic. She touched the jewelry photo, then pulled back as if burned. Where did you get these? She asked, her voice shaky. Sarah replied, From your room. I never wanted to invade your privacy, but after what I heard, I had to know the truth. Emily stood, eyes flashing with anger. You had no right. That's mine. Sarah shook her head. No, Emily. The earrings are my grandmother's. The bracelet was from your father. You said they were lost, but I found them hidden in your closet. Emily sank back, hands covering her face, her voice small. I just borrowed them. I was going to return them. Sarah opened the journal, reading aloud. Met with Dr. Hansen about M's cognitive decline. Once I'm 21, I could manage her finances if I document enough concerning her behaviors. This isn't borrowing, Emily. This is a plan to strip me of my rights. Emily burst into tears, not the manipulative kind, but a raw outpouring of someone exposed. I didn't mean it. I was scared, okay? Frightened you'd abandon me. Afraid I'd lose everything. Sarah's heart clenched. She wanted to hug Emily to soothe her pain, but held back. I spent my life ensuring you never felt abandoned, she said, her voice breaking. But you repaid me by stealing, lying, and plotting to take my assets. Do you know how much that hurts? Emily wiped her tears, whispering, I know I was wrong. But you don't understand. I grew up knowing 3 families rejected me before you adopted me. I always thought you kept me because you had no other choice. The confession cut like a blade. Sarah knew Emily had early childhood trauma, but never realized it had shaped her into someone so fearful and manipulative. You're wrong, Sarah said softly. I chose you, Emily. I wanted you out of dozens of files because I saw potential, a little girl who needed love. Emily looked up, eyes red. Really? You weren't just desperate? Sarah shook her head. No, I chose you because I believed in you. Silence fell. Only the clock's ticking was audible. Emily looked at the papers, then away. I don't know what to say. What do you want me to do? Beg for forgiveness? Sarah gathered the documents, her voice firm. I want you to be honest with me and yourself. You can go to the state and use the trust fund stipend, but I won't pay for Princeton. You need to learn responsibility. Emily nodded faintly, eyes still resentful. You think I'll thank you for this? Sarah replied. I don't need thanks. I need you to grow. That afternoon, Sarah went to James Carter's literature class. She immersed herself in the lecture on The Great Gatsby, feeling like she was rediscovering herself through each page. James kept her after class. You seem pensive today, Sarah, she smiled sadly. Just family stuff. I confronted my daughter. James nodded, eyes sympathetic, tough, but you're stronger than you think. They got coffee and Sarah opened up about Emily, not to complain, but to unburden. James listened, non-judgmental, saying softly, You're doing the right thing. Sometimes love means setting limits. Sarah found Emily packing and preparing for the state's dorms back home. She was silent, folding clothes. Sarah stood at the door. Need help? Emily shook her head. I've got it. Sarah nodded, not pushing. She went to her room, opened her notebook, and wrote about a woman reclaiming herself after heartbreak. The words flowed, healing her. That night, Sarah got a text from Lisa. You okay? How's Emily? Sarah replied. We're both learning to move forward. She looked at the garden where darkness cloaked the roses. She thought of Michael, the days she dreamed of a perfect family. Now that happiness was no longer a flawless dream, but a thorny reality, a mother-daughter bond being rebuilt from ruins. Sarah knew Emily might still be angry, but wasn't afraid anymore. She'd found strength within herself, and for the first time, she believed they could overcome. Emily appeared at the door. I'll try, Mom, but I'm not ready to forgive you. Sarah nodded. I understand. We have time. They sat in silence, but it carried the seeds of hope this time. Sarah stood in David Thompson's small law office, sunlight streaming through the 10th floor window, highlighting the wrinkles she once tried to hide. Today she wore no worn blouse or clearance dress. She chose a deep green sweater, a color Michael once said made her eyes shine. A new fire burned within her, not anger but a resolve to reclaim her life. After confronting Emily and uncovering painful secrets, Sarah knew it was time to act. She was no longer the mother who unthinkingly sacrificed. David, Michael's college friend, greeted her with a warm handshake. "Sarah, it's been too long. You mentioned unexpected news." He gestured to a chair, eyes curious. Sarah smiled faintly, placing a stack of documents on the desk. "Yes, about Michael's investment in NeuroSync. It paid off." David raised an eyebrow, flipping through the papers. "That startup, I told Michael it was too risky, but he was stubborn." Sarah nodded, her voice low. $560,000 after taxes. Enough to change everything. David whistled, eyes wide. "This is a winning lottery ticket, Sarah. What's your plan?" Sarah took a deep breath, her voice steady. "No Princeton tuition. No mortgaging the house. I want to use this money to protect my future and teach Emily about responsibility." She recounted everything: the overheard conversation, the hidden jewelry, the journal revealing manipulation plans, the email rejecting the state scholarship. David listened, his brow furrowing. "This isn't just teenage rebellion," he said gravely. "This is deliberate, and the plan to declare you cognitively impaired is serious. It could be considered fraudulent intent." Sarah nodded, relieved someone understood. "I don't want revenge, David. I want Emily to learn that actions have consequences, that love isn't a tool for manipulation." David tapped his pen. "Legally, you're not obligated to pay tuition. Emily's 18, and the NeuroSync money is yours. You can cancel the mortgage plan before it's finalized." A weight lifted from Sarah's shoulders. She continued, "I want to set up a trust for Emily with conditions. I need your help." They outlined a plan for 2 hours: transfer the Princeton funds to a private account only Sarah controlled, cancel Emily's credit cards, and establish a trust requiring Emily to work full-time for 2 years post-graduation to access the bulk of the funds. David handed her a community college brochure. "One more thing, Sarah. You loved literature and wrote fantastic stories. Why not pursue that dream again?" Sarah took the brochure, her heart stirring. She remembered nights writing in her notebook, Michael encouraging her to publish. After his death, she set it aside to be a mother. "I'm 58, David." "Too late," she said, but her voice wavered. David smiled. "Too late." Robert Frost published his first poetry collection at 40. You have a whole life ahead. Sarah found Emily at the kitchen table back home, scrolling through Princeton forms. "Where were you? I needed these signed hours ago," Emily snapped. Sarah set her purse down, her voice calm. "I met with David Thompson. There's news about your father's investment." Emily's eyes lit up with greed. "How much?" "Enough to change our lives." "But not how you think." Emily froze. "What's that mean?" Sarah sat, looking her in the eye. "I know everything. The scholarship you rejected, the Oxford program, you hid the jewelry, you stole the journal, planning to take my assets. I'm not paying for Princeton." Emily stood, face flushed. "You can't do this. I've accepted. You want to ruin my life." Sarah shook her head. "I'm giving you a chance at state with the scholarship you rejected, and a trust fund, monthly stipends while you study the rest after 2 years of work." Emily shouted, "You're crazy. I won't do it." Sarah's voice was cold. "You can stay here, pay household expenses, and attend community college with me, or find another way, but I won't be manipulated anymore." Emily stormed upstairs, slamming the door. Sarah heard sobs but didn't follow. She opened her laptop and enrolled in an American literature class at the community college. That evening, she attended James Carter's class, feeling like a nervous first-year student. James greeted her. Ready new student, Sarah sat among younger students, engrossed in the Moby Dick lecture. For the first time, she felt she belonged not as Emily's mom, but as Sarah, the literature lover. After class, James invited her for coffee. They sat in a cozy cafe, soft lights warming the air. "You seem lighter," James said sincerely. Sarah shared about Emily, the Princeton decision, and the trust fund. James listened, then said, "You're giving her the greatest gift, growth." Sarah nodded, eyes misty. "But I'm scared she'll hate me." James smiled. "Maybe, but you're loving her the right way." The conversation stretched, and Sarah realized she'd forgotten what it felt like to be heard without judgment. Back home, Sarah found Emily in the living room, eyes red. "I'm going to the state," she said reluctantly. "But I still think you're selfish." Sarah nodded. "I understand. But you'll see, it's for you." Emily said nothing, retreating upstairs. Sarah opened her notebook, writing about a woman rising from betrayal's ashes. The words felt like new blood in her veins. The next morning, Sarah got an email from James Poetry reading on Tuesday at the college. "You coming?" she replied, "Definitely." She looked at the garden, a late-season rose blooming defiantly in the cold. Sarah smiled, knowing her decision, though painful, was right. Emily might be angry, but Sarah wasn't afraid. She was rebuilding her life, and for the first time she felt free. Emily appeared at the door, suitcase in hand. "I'm leaving." Sarah nodded, not hugging, not pushing. "Good luck," she said. Emily paused, glanced at her, then left. The door closed, but Sarah knew a new one was opening for both of them. Sarah stood at the living room window, the pale winter sunlight highlighting her face where wrinkles now seemed a sign of strength rather than exhaustion. The suburban New York home was quiet except for the chirping sparrows in the garden where Michael's roses bloomed despite winter's approach. Sarah held a coffee mug, feeling lighter but still carrying a trace of worry. After tense confrontations with Emily, after uncovering painful secrets and setting new boundaries, she knew today would be another challenge. She had announced her decision not to pay for Princeton, and Emily reluctantly accepted the state university scholarship. But the truth remained sharp, and Sarah braced for another conversation where emotions might erupt. Emily trudged downstairs in an old hoodie, hair tied up, eyes still red from days of tears and arguments. She slumped into the chair across from Sarah, clutching her phone like a shield. "What else do you want to talk about?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with fatigue and defiance. Sarah set her coffee down, meeting her daughter's eyes. "I want to talk about the future, not just yours but mine too." Emily frowned. "What does that mean?" "You already canceled Princeton, forcing me to go to state. What's left to say?" Sarah took a deep breath, her voice calm but firm. "I didn't force you, Emily. I gave you a choice. State scholarship or find your way. But today I want you to understand why I'm doing this." She opened her laptop, showing a new bank account holding the $560,000 from Michael's investment. "This is from your father, an investment I thought was pointless. I'm using it to secure our future, but not by paying for Princeton." Emily stared at the screen, a familiar calculating glint in her eyes, fading when she realized Sarah wouldn't budge. "So you're keeping all the money for yourself, for what? A new house, a vacation?" Her voice dripped with sarcasm, but Sarah didn't take the bait. "No, Emily. As I said, I set up a trust for you, monthly stipends for school, the rest after 2 years of work. But I'm also investing in myself. I've enrolled in a literature class at the community college." Emily laughed, not hiding her mockery. "Literature? You're 58. What's the point?" "Selling books at the library." Sarah smiled sadly. "I'm studying because I love literature, because I abandoned that passion when your father died. This isn't about punishing you, it's about living for myself, something I should have done years ago." Emily crossed her arms, her voice cold. "Good for you. But what about me? You're leaving me to struggle at state with a measly stipend while you play student." Sarah stood, stepping closer, her voice gentle but sharp. "You're not struggling, Emily. You have a full scholarship, an opportunity thousands dream of. You'll work part-time, yes, but that's how you grow. I worked double shifts to raise you, and you'll learn to stand alone." Emily jumped up, eyes blazing. "You're comparing me to you. You chose that life, I didn't. I was supposed to be at Princeton with my friends, with a real future." Sarah shook her head. "A real future isn't about a school's name, it's about how you live. You chose lies and manipulation. Now you face the consequences." The kitchen grew heavy, each word carrying years of misunderstanding. Emily sat, tears falling, but not staged this time. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I'm scared of losing everything, my friends, my image, all I've built." "You took Princeton? You took me?" Sarah's heart ached, but she didn't yield. "I didn't take anything," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm allowing you to find yourself, not the image you created to impress others." Sarah pulled an envelope from her bag, a letter from State University confirming Emily's reinstated scholarship. "This is your chance," she said, placing it before Emily. "But you have to decide. I can't live your life for you." Emily stared at the letter, hands trembling, then pushed it aside. "I'll go," she said, her voice small but resolute. "But not for you." "Because I have no choice," Sarah nodded. "That's a start." That afternoon, Sarah attended James Carter's literature class. She immersed herself in the lecture on the Scarlet Letter, feeling like she was rediscovering a lost part of herself. James kept her after. "You seem different, stronger." Sarah smiled. "I'm learning to set boundaries with my daughter and me." James nodded, eyes bright. You should write about it. Your story deserves to be told. Sarah blushed, the idea taking root. That evening, Sarah met Lisa at a small cafe. Lisa hugged her tightly. You look different, like you're alive again. Sarah shared about the talk with Emily, the trust fund, and the class. Lisa smiled. You're being a real mom, not just a sacrificer. Emily will understand in time. Sarah nodded, but worry lingered. What if she hates me? Lisa took her hand. She might for a while, but she'll thank you. You've given her a chance to be better. Back home, Sarah found Emily packing the last of her things for State's dorms. She was quiet, folding clothes. I found a roommate, Emily said, not looking up. Tyler from Lakeside. He's... okay. Sarah nodded. Good. He seems reliable. Emily nodded faintly and went upstairs. Sarah opened her notebook, writing about a woman finding light after betrayal's darkness. The words flowed, healing her. The next morning, Sarah got an email from James Poetry, reading on Tuesday at the college. You in? She replied definitely. She looked at the garden, a late-season rose standing proud in the cold. Sarah smiled, knowing her decision, though painful, was right. Emily might be angry, but Sarah wasn't afraid. She was rebuilding her life, and for the first time she felt free. Emily appeared at the door, suitcase in hand. I'm leaving, Sarah nodded, not hugging, not pressing. Good luck, she said. Emily paused, looked at her for a moment, then left. The door closed, but Sarah knew a new one was opening for both. Sarah walked into James Carter's literature class at the community college, where a soft golden light illuminated rows of young students. At 58, she was the oldest in the room, but she didn't feel out of place today. Her deep green sweater hugged her shoulders, and a confident smile graced her lips, something unthinkable months ago. After tense confrontations with Emily after setting boundaries and refusing to fund Princeton, Sarah felt a newfound freedom. She was no longer just Emily's mother, but living for herself. Today's lecture on Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Were Watching God captivated her. Sarah raised her hand, speaking confidently about Janie's journey of self-discovery. James nodded, eyes sparkling. Excellent insight, Sarah. You've captured the character's core. Young students turned, some smiling. Sarah blushed, not from embarrassment, but from the joy of recognition. After class, James kept her back. You should write an essay on this. You could publish, Sarah laughed. I'm just starting again, not ready yet. James tilted his head, not prepared or not believing in yourself. His question lingered as Sarah returned home. She opened her notebook where short stories were taking shape, tales of a woman rediscovering herself after years of sacrifice. She wrote about the pain of betrayal, the strength of boundaries, and the joy of reclaiming passion. The words flowed, healing her. Sarah realized writing wasn't just a hobby, it was how she redefined herself. Meanwhile, Emily had moved to State University's dorms, living with Tyler, a cheerful roommate from Lakeside Prep. She started a part-time cafe job, initially calling it demeaning. However, through brief texts, Sarah noticed small changes. Emily complained less and began mentioning classes, especially introductory literature. My professor said my essay was pretty good, Emily texted once with an eye roll emoji, but Sarah sensed hidden pride. One afternoon, Sarah met Lisa at their new book club. They sat around a wooden table in the local library, discussing Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. Sarah's analysis of the protagonist's obsession impressed the group. Lisa whispered, "You're shining, Sarah, like you've found yourself." Sarah smiled. "I'm trying. For the first time, I'm not just living to be a mom." Lisa squeezed her hand, "And you're doing it beautifully." That evening, Sarah accepted James's coffee invitation. They sat in a small cafe near the college, and the warm lights created a cozy atmosphere. James shared about his life, a divorced professor who loved literature but missed opportunities due to family duties. "You remind me it's never too late to start over," he said, eyes twinkling. Sarah blushed. "I'm just learning not to let Emily define me." James nodded. "And you're doing it wonderfully." The conversation continued, and Sarah realized she was laughing more. Talking freely, no longer worrying about saying the wrong thing. James invited her to a poetry reading at the college. "You'll love it. There's a whole literary community there." Sarah agreed, feeling a new door opening. She saw Emily's text at home, got an A on my Hemingway essay. No big deal, but terrific. Sarah smiled, replying, "Proud of you. Keep it up." Emily didn't respond, but Sarah knew it was a small step forward. Weeks later, Sarah attended the poetry reading. She stood among the crowd listening to young students share emotional verses. James introduced her to a colleague who suggested submitting her stories to a local magazine. "You have a unique voice," she said. Sarah was surprised, but for the first time didn't dismiss the idea. On the way home, she stopped at a clothing store buying a dress she liked, not clearance. In the mirror, Sarah stood taller, her smile more confident. She was no longer just the sacrificing mother. Meanwhile, Emily was changing. She called Sarah less irritable. "Tyler says I should try modern literature. He's annoying, but maybe right." Sarah laughed. "Listen to Tyler. He seems to know what you need." Emily grumbled. "Don't side with him." But Sarah heard humor in her voice, which has been rare these past months. One evening, Sarah wrote at the kitchen table, golden light on her pages. She began drafting the second chapter about rediscovering oneself after betrayal. She wrote about finding Emily's manipulation, the power of boundaries, and the joy of rediscovering passion. James read the first draft, commenting, "This isn't just your story, Sarah. It's for anyone who's lost themselves." The praise moved her, but she knew this journey was hers alone. Emily called a week later, hesitant. "Can I come home this weekend to talk?" Sarah agreed, hopeful, yet nervous. When Emily arrived, she wore a simple sweater, no longer sporting dyed highlights or designer clothes. They sat in the living room sipping tea, and Emily said, "I hated state at first, but the literature class is cool. I'm thinking of taking another." Sarah nodded, not pushing good. "What's interesting about it?" Emily hesitated, then shared about her Sylvia Plath essay, her voice passionate without bravado. Sarah saw Emily slowly finding herself not through a glamorous image, but through real passion. "Are you still mad at me?" Sarah asked gently. Emily looked down. "Yes, but less. I know you did this because I went too far." The small admission was like sunlight through clouds. They didn't hug or gush, but Sarah felt a real connection, not based on manipulation or sacrifice. That night, Sarah added to second chapters, writing about hope. Family love isn't blind sacrifice, but painful honesty. She looked at the garden moonlight on the roses. Sarah knew their journey was long, but for the first time she believed they could walk it together, not as a perfect mother and daughter, but as two people learning to love rightly. Sarah sat in the living room, spring's early light filtering through the curtains, illuminating the manuscript of second chapters she'd just finished. 2 years had passed since the painful confrontation with Emily, since she canceled Princeton funding and set new boundaries. The suburban New York home was no longer a battlefield of harsh words or tense silences. It had become a place where Sarah rediscovered herself and rewrote her life story, not just as a mother, but as a woman with passions and aspirations. Today, her heart beat faster than usual. Emily had called requesting a just us talk, and Sarah sensed something significant was coming. Emily entered in a light jacket, her blonde hair no longer expensively highlighted but tied back. She set her bag down, sat across from Sarah on the sofa, clutching the old leather journal that had once broken Sarah's heart. "I want to talk," Emily began, her voice hesitant but free of defensiveness. Sarah nodded, setting her tea down. "I'm listening." Emily took a deep breath, opening the journal. "I've been working with my therapist, Dr. Mercer, for a year. She's helped me understand why I acted the way I did. I want to share it with you if you're ready." Sarah's heart tightened, not from fear, but from hope mixed with apprehension. She nodded. "I'm ready." Emily began reading, her voice trembling. "I manipulated you, lied to you, hurt you to protect myself. I was scared of being abandoned, of not being enough, because I knew 3 families had rejected me before you adopted me. I thought controlling everything you money, my image, would keep me safe." Emily paused, eyes red. "I was wrong, Mom. I hurt the one person who always loved me unconditionally." The living room air felt still. Sarah's eyes welled, but she held back, letting Emily continue. "I'm not asking for instant forgiveness," Emily said, her voice breaking. "I know what I did, stealing jewelry, rejecting the scholarship, planning to take your assets, can't be erased with an apology. But I want you to know I'm trying to change to be better." Sarah looked at her, seeing a different Emily, not the calculating girl who mocked her, but a 21-year-old facing herself. "You're brave to say this," Sarah said softly. "I know you had childhood wounds, but I have to admit I spoiled you too much." I thought loving you meant giving you everything, but that only hurt us. Emily nodded, wiping tears. Dr. Mercer says I have attachment issues from my early years when I wasn't appropriately loved, but she's clear it's no excuse for hurting you. Sarah smiled sadly. I don't want you to blame yourself forever. I want us to move forward together. Emily closed the journal and placed it on the table. She said, I'm studying literature at the State, and her voice was lighter. I used to think it was useless just for show, but now it helps me understand myself. I published a research paper on Jane Austen, and my professor says I have potential. Sarah was surprised, her heart warming. That's amazing, Emily. I'm proud of you. Emily looked at her eyes shining. I thought you'd laugh if you knew I dropped pre-law. But you're not who I thought. You're more complex. The comment touched Sarah. She realized Emily saw her as a person, not just mom, a role to exploit. I'm learning to be myself too, Sarah said. I finished my book's second chapters about finding myself after years of sacrifice. Emily's eyes widened. You wrote a book? Really? Sarah nodded, handing her the manuscript. Emily skimmed a few pages, then said softly, I want to read it all. I want to understand you better. They walked in the garden that afternoon where Michael's roses sprouted spring buds. Emily pointed to a young rose. I remember Dad saying you loved roses because they're strong yet fragile. Sarah nodded, her voice low. Like us, right? Delicate but capable of strength. Emily smiled, free of calculation for once. They didn't hug or gush, but Sarah felt a new bond, authentic, not built on manipulation or sacrifice. That evening, Sarah attended Lisa's book club reading. She shared an excerpt from second chapters, her voice trembling as she spoke of self-liberation. The group applauded Lisa, hugging her. You're an inspiration, Sarah. At home, Sarah got a text from James Carter. Heard you read at the club. I want to hear it live next time. She smiled, replying, Definitely. She began dating James unhurriedly, each meeting making her feel more alive. Weeks later, Emily invited Sarah to a presentation at the State. She spoke on Austen, confident but not boastful. Sarah watched from the audience, pride mixed with surprise. Emily was no longer obsessed with glamour. She found joy in academia. After Emily approached, Thanks for coming, Mom. Want to grab dinner? Sarah nodded. I'd love to. They dined at a small restaurant near campus with Tyler, Emily's roommate. Tyler teased Emily's a literature star but still burns lasagna. Emily rolled her eyes but laughed genuinely. Sarah saw Emily had found a true friend not based on status. Over dinner, Emily said I ran into Chloe Henderson last week. She bragged about Yale, but I didn't feel jealous. I like this life better. Sarah nodded. That's a sign you're finding yourself. That night, Sarah added a chapter about imperfect but genuine reconciliation to second chapters. She looked at the garden moonlight on the rosebuds. Sarah knew her bond with Emily would never be the dream she once had, but it was becoming something better, a connection rooted in truth and respect. Emily texted, Thanks for today, Mom. I'll keep trying. Sarah smiled, replying, I believe in you. For the first time, her hope felt solid, like the roses outside, ready to bloom despite winter's harshness. Sarah stood in the crowded auditorium at State University, the glow of chandeliers highlighting her face where wrinkles now marked resilience rather than weariness. 4 years had passed since the painful days of discovering Emily's manipulation, since Sarah set boundaries and rediscovered herself. Today she stood not just as a mother, but as a writer, a lecturer, a woman who had redefined her life. Emily, now 23, adjusted her graduation cap on stage, her eyes shining with genuine pride, free of the calculation that once broke Sarah's heart. Sarah wore a blue silk dress, a gift from James Carter, her new husband. They'd married in a small ceremony with close friends last year, and the ring on her finger still felt novel, yet warm. Beside her, James smiled, camera ready to capture Emily's moment. Tyler, Emily's roommate, now a chef at an upscale restaurant, adjusted a floral arrangement on her gown, muttering, The literature department's star deserves the best flowers. Sarah laughed her heart whole, seeing Emily surrounded by people who cared. Emily stepped onto the stage, receiving the department's Outstanding Senior Award. A prestigious academic journal had accepted her thesis on power dynamics in 19th century women's literature. Sarah clapped, tears glistening not from sorrow but pride. Emily was no longer the girl fixated on Princeton's glamour. She'd found her true passion at State, transforming from a manipulator to a passionate scholar. After the ceremony, the crowd gathered outside, laughter and congratulations echoing. Sarah stood with James watching Emily chat with her mentor, Professor Winters. Tyler pulled Sarah aside, whispering, "She's really changed, ma'am. When we first lived together, Emily was all schemes, but now she's honest." Sarah nodded, warmth spreading. "Thank you, Tyler. You've helped a lot." Tyler shrugged, grinning. "I just burned lasagna to make her face reality." Emily approached, clutching her diploma, beaming, "Officially graduated." "Mom." Sarah smiled. "Not just graduated, outstanding. I'm so proud." Emily hesitated, then said, "I have news to share. I got accepted to a master's program at the University of Michigan focusing on literature and social justice." Sarah's eyes widened. "That's wonderful. It's perfect for you." Emily smiled, her gaze holding something deeper. "There's more," she said, voice lowering. "I sent your book, second chapters, to a professor at Michigan. They want to invite you as a visiting lecturer for the fall." Sarah was stunned, hand to her chest. "You did what Emily laughed, free of calculation. Just an introduction. Your book is fantastic. You deserve it. The official offer arrives tomorrow." James beside her smiled. "I knew about it. I've arranged a sabbatical to teach at Michigan that term." Sarah looked at them, tears welling. "You two planned this?" Emily nodded. "I learned from you that love means giving opportunities, not control." In that moment, Sarah felt a profound symmetry. 4 years ago, she taught Emily about consequences and responsibility. Now Emily was giving her a gift, an opportunity to expand her horizons, not for Emily's gain, but for Sarah's growth. "You've really grown," Sarah whispered, voice breaking. Emily blushed. "I had a great teacher." That evening, they celebrated at a small restaurant. The table gathered their unconventional family, Sarah and James Emily, and her new boyfriend, Michael, a quiet history student, Tyler, and his partner, James Lisa, and her new husband, Paulo. Laughter rang out, free of calculation or posturing, just pure joy. Emily tapped her glass. "I have an announcement." All eyes turned to her. "I chose Michigan not just for the program," she said firmly, "but to be near Mom, even for one term. She allowed me to find myself, and I want to return that." Sarah's heart warmed, tears falling. She stood, hugging Emily, the first embrace in years without awkwardness. "Thank you," she whispered. Emily hugged back tightly, voice soft. "I'm sorry for all those years." Sarah shook her head. "We've moved past it, sweetheart. Now it's a new chapter." During dessert, Sarah spotted a familiar face, Chloe Henderson, now at NYU after leaving Princeton. Chloe approached, hesitant, "Mrs. Johnson, congratulations to Emily on graduating. And on your new book." Sarah, surprised, smiled politely. "Thank you, Chloe. How are you?" Chloe nodded, eyes tinged with regret. "I wasn't kind to Emily or you. I'm sorry." Sarah nodded gently. "We all make mistakes, Chloe. What matters is what you learn." Chloe smiled and left, leaving Sarah reflecting on forgiveness's power. James held Sarah's hand on the drive home. "What are you thinking?" Sarah smiled. "How life brings the unexpected. 4 years ago, I thought I'd lost Emily forever. Now we have each other, not perfect, but real." James kissed her forehead, a story worth every pain. That night, Sarah opened her email and found Michigan's invitation. She pictured the fall there, teaching writing, being near Emily. She looked at the garden, Michael's roses blooming under the moonlight. Sarah wrote in her notebook, "Family isn't a perfect dream, but imperfect people choosing to love and grow together." She smiled, knowing that whatever the future held, she and Emily had found a new connection, not based on blood, but sincerity and effort. Sarah closed her eyes at peace, ready for her life's next chapter.